It's DUG24. 24 hours, 24 sessions, 24 speakers, 100% Microsoft Dynamics. It's unparalleled, unprecedented, and undeniable fun with your hosts Beau Schwieso and Bobby Small. Let's get into it with another episode of DUG24.
Three and a half hours in, you feeling good? Kids off to school?
I'm feeling good so far. I haven't touched a coffee yet.
Good for you.
I am slightly regretting not filling up my water bottle. So that'll probably be during this next session, is grabbing a nice little ice water. I recently switched to nugget ice, so
ooh, that's a popular thing. The little teeny chunks, and you get the machine for your countertop. Yeah,
I was super blessed. My wife is a nurse. She always grabs it from the hospital. That like hospital nugget ice, it just hits different.
Shannon, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Ready when
awesome.
You boys are.
Yeah, thank you for being with us. Yeah, we're excited. Like I said, we're up to almost a quarter of the way through, and excited to hear from you. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
And thanks for saving us from talking about nugget ice any longer.
Yeah, Beau was
I was very ready
getting
to do
deep
it,
into nugget ice discussion.
I came in on something deep. How about we talk about something deeper, like Business Central reporting?
I love it.
That sound fair? All right. Well, I am going to share my screen here. I think we have chat enabled. So as we're going through this presentation, if you have some questions about what I'm showing, or maybe you want to see something a little bit deeper, we may have some time at the end. If not, you can reach out to me after this presentation. Bobby has promised me only 50 minutes, which is not a lot of talking on financial reporting, but we're going to try to get through as much as we can. But I'm very excited for you all to be here. So today we're going to be talking about easier and better ways to report on Business Central data. If you've been in Business Central for a while, you realize getting reports out, not fantastic at times. But the good news is Microsoft has been fully invested in this. They are putting a lot of money and time last year and this year into financial reporting investments. And we're going to talk about all those new features that are being rolled out, and maybe some features that have existed that you just didn't know about. So excited to be presenting on this fun topic. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm a Microsoft MVP, just got renewed for my 8th year, an MVP of Business Central. I actually came from Dynamics GP. This is my 25th year working in Dynamics, almost 26. And I started fresh out of college with a product called Dynamics Great Plains. At that time, it wasn't even Dynamics, it was just Great Plains. And then Microsoft bought it, and the whole trajectory of my career changed at that point. I'm on the programming committee, actually for Dynamics User Group Live, Dynamics Minds, a lot of other conferences, and I've been speaking at conferences for about 12 years. So this year I was in Asia, I was speaking in Europe, and luckily I'm here on this 24-hour podcast as well. So excited to be here. And currently based out of Nashville, Tennessee, though I'm building a house right outside of Park City, Utah. So I'll be moving next year, and Nashville will no longer be my home. All right, what are we going to cover on this session today? We're going to go into kind of 4 groups of reporting tools available to you inside of Business Central Core. So we'll be talking about analysis views. There is a lot that's changed in analysis views. This is a newer feature that was released probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I lose track of time because there's so many releases. But if you haven't used it before, it's very powerful, and we have some more advanced features that we can now use, which is great. We're going to be talking about Excel reports. So if you haven't used out-of-the-box Excel reports, this is a really great time for you to learn about them. And we'll be talking about how you can actually edit these reports as well, which is kind of cool. I don't think a lot of people know that they can actually take what Microsoft gives them, edit it, and publish it back. We're going to be talking about financial reporting. So there's a lot of changes coming or have came already to financial reporting. I know 28 was a lot of new financial reporting features. So if you've been in BC in 28, you've probably seen a lot of changes. We're going to talk about what's changed and what you can use. And then last but not least, Power BI. So what has changed in Power BI? So there's actually a couple of things that are good for you to know if you are using Power BI that you should be prepared for. So that's our topics here. And we are we're going to start off with analysis views, kind of a show and tell girl over a PowerPoint girl. So you'll see me jump back and forth between BC and my PowerPoint here. But I will provide these slides to Bobby and Beau, and they can figure out how to get them to you after the session is over. All right, so what the heck is analysis views, right? You look at the screen on Business Central and you see a bunch of little symbols and buttons. And if you haven't played around with them before and you've never touched this one button, you probably didn't know analysis views was actually here. So it's just one of those hidden little features that you do need to be trained on to understand that it's there. But this, like I said, came out about 3 years ago. And the whole premise behind it was some of us came from GP where we had smart lists. So we could take a list of data and we could do some filtering, we could add some columns, and we could actually send it out to Excel and do totaling. So Microsoft was like, okay, we're not going to build smart lists inside of BC, but we need a way to do analysis type reporting, and we want to make sure that our users can easily use it, and then we can do some totaling. So this analysis view was kind of born, but the icon looks like this. I always say it's like a mini Excel sheet or a mini pivot table. So if you see it here on the search button, and surprisingly, it's available almost everywhere inside of Business Central. So it's pretty hard to miss this little symbol, but if you do miss it, yeah, you'll know you missed it. And let me just check real quick here. I want to make sure the sandbox is on 28. Yay. Okay. I opened the sandbox today earlier and I was like, I don't know what version of sandbox this is because I'm in sandboxes doing demos all the time, but we're going to go into this business manager role center. All right, so keep in mind, I am on 28. If you're not on 28, you actually are running out of time to get on 28. I think that the end of this month or beginning of next month is the last rollouts of 28, and then they're going to start the 29 version. So if you haven't rolled on to 28 yet, you're kind of running out of time. So get your testing done so you can kind of update there. All right. So where do we find analysis view? I always say it's better for ledger entries. If you don't know, ledger entries is kind of the source of all history of BC, and you can pick your flavor of ledger entries. We have obviously general ledger entries, which is our financials. That's our core bread and butter, but we have vendor ledger entries, customer ledger entries, item ledger entries, which what version we're going to go into. So let's just open up general ledger entries. This is probably our most common place where we're using analysis view inside of Business Central. And if we go here to the top right corner, like my screenshot showed, we have this analysis mode. Now, I was noticing something quirky about BC on these newer versions was that when you were opening these pages, it was actually already opening up in analysis mode. So some of you might have accidentally got here. I don't know what broke that was opening that way. But your list page should look like this. So here's some tips and tricks that I like to do. First of all, I would recommend, number one, that you filter down your list before you go into analysis mode. You don't have to do that, but it definitely makes your life easier. And I'll show you in a minute how you can use Copilot to help you with that. But let's say you're looking for transactions for a certain date range. This table contains all of your history from whenever you brought your historical data in. So we typically want to add a filter or two before we start doing analysis mode. It's just going to make it more efficient and the performance better. And I'm just looking here. I know I have data in, it looks like September of 26. So I'm just going to use that as my date range. So I'll do 9/1/26 to 9/30/26. And kind of just give this a date filter. Ooh, we don't have a lot of transactions there. That's not exciting. Let's pick a better date range. And we might have to do a whole year because Microsoft demo data, we don't know what we have. Okay. Skip that. We're just going to go to the whole year. Okay, that's not so bad. All right, so now we have a whole year's worth of data. Now, if we want to, we can go in and filter this to maybe one specific account. I don't really like direct costs because that's like a system generated one, but let's pick one of these expense accounts. So we'll do 68210. Little tip and trick, you can come here to the top of the column and say filter to this value, and it drops the filter in. So now we actually have data filtered a little bit more. And if we look at kind of our numbers, I'm not going to go too much into detail. We can see that some of this is different months, right? All right, so now if I want to see this expense account, and this is licensing fees and royalties. So I'm running maybe a royalties report, and I want to see it by month. And then maybe I want to do some more pivots, and I want to see it by department because it looks like I'm tracking a department dimension here. Now, here's some bonus tips and tricks here, right? First of all, when you go in to personalize this window, and if you've never personalized in Business Central, this is going to be shocking for you. We can add some fields, okay? First of all, I want the GL account name. That definitely helps me when I'm looking at this. And then in here, I might be able to see the source number. That's a good one. Let's see if we can drop that somewhere. The source type, and maybe user ID of who posted this. So I have some more data here. But something that's really cool that we can do is before we get to the pivot, which we're about to do, you'll notice I was limited on how many fields I could actually enter into this list page. So new to BC in the last, I don't know, 2 versions, we now have this capability to go to profile roles, which is like a setup window inside of BC. And this is the window where you can kind of customize those roles. So I'm logged in as business manager. I changed my role setting to business manager. And in here, I can actually customize my pages. All right. And what this allows me to do is in personalization mode, I'm kind of limited on what I can do from a user standpoint in adding my columns. But here in this view, I can go into general ledger entries, same window I was on, this one here. And, oh, I must have clicked on the wrong one. I got the Power BI version. Hold on. It's always fun when Microsoft names 2 things the same. You see this one's report and analysis, one's with archive. We got to grab the right one. Okay, so now that I'm in here, when you go into that customized pages, you're already kind of in a personalization mode. So you are going to still see your add field here. But the difference is when we add these, it's going to be everyone using this. And if we start to go down, we're actually going to see a lot more fields that we had before. So before we had those fields, I was adding it as a user. So like source number I added, right? Source type I added. But when I add it here, it's adding for everyone who's using this. And then I have more fields that are not available when I'm just using personalization mode, which is really nice. So I always have customers ask me like, hey, this list is missing this field. Can I get this field in here? And I'm like, okay, we'd have to do a customization to do that, but not anymore. Now we can kind of come in and we can say, okay, we want to add all these fields. All right. So you have a lot more fields here, like journal batch name. Maybe I want to see that. And I can drop that in. Okay, when you're done, that kind of saves the customization. And so then what you want to do, let's get out of here. Let's go back. And I'm actually going to save this view real quick because I'm going to get out of this window. Let's do 2026 entries for 68210. We'll save that as a view. And then now I'm going to just refresh my page because when we do a customization, it's not going to kick us out like it does with extensions, but it is going to come out and obviously build that. But remember, when I was in that personalization of the profile roles, I added that journal batch name, which I didn't have here before. Now, some of this is coming from vendor type data, so we're not going to have a journal batch name, but obviously you get the point. If you see the field in that role center mode, you can actually add it here, which makes it super nice. So a little tip and trick, and that is available on pretty much every window inside of BC now. You go into that profile roles, and then you can roll that out to all your users, which is really great. All right, I'm back here in my filtered list because I saved it, thank goodness. And then here I can go into analysis mode. So we have that filtered. And if we come in, you'll notice that BC is already kind of like doing its own pivot table. And it's like, oh, you want to see the total for 68210. Maybe I do, right? Maybe that's my goal. If I scroll over to my amount column, I am going to see that it actually totaled those transactions for me to 12,250. And if I want the breakdown, I could click on the little caret, and then you can see here that it is grouping not only by account number, but it's also grouping by department code. Well, that's great. But I said I want to group this by month as well, right? I need a report by month because my boss is asking me how much royalty fees do we get charged per month, not just by account. So what I can do is I can come over here and you'll notice there's a posting date month column. It's actually not turned on right now, but I can drag that down and I'm going to actually put it as my top layer of how this is filtering. You see how I did that? If I want to change it, the order, I just kind of move these around, right? But let's put it back where it was. So I'm grouping first by posting date, then I'm grouping by GL account, then I'm grouping by department. Okay, so I have all of those values there. And then you'll notice here, if I go over to the right, I have totals by month that equal my 12,250. So now I know per month how much was I actually making or charged in those, in those filters. So you'll say, okay, what do accountants do with every single list? They love to send this down to Excel. It's their favorite. In fact, Microsoft at one point was asking me, do you think users would want their financials in Power BI? I said, so they could send them to Excel? No, they don't want them in Power BI. They want them here or they want them in Excel. So export, the right click on the grid, export, open in Excel. This is actually going to drop this to Excel. And when it drops it to Excel, it's going to keep the filtering and it's also going to keep the totaling that it had before. So if we go over here to the right, you'll notice that it's actually giving us those totals by month, and we can actually, pull this down a little bit like we can in Excel and expand it and unexpand it. But essentially the nice thing is you have this here in the grid like you would inside of the. So that's a really great way to kind of do quick pivots. I use this all the time in general ledger entries for an ad hoc trial balance because I bring in a lot of historical data for our customers and I need to make sure it balances to 0 by month, or maybe sometimes I need to total a GL account by month and I need to run it against a financial. Then this is a really, 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 so this is great. Now, sometimes we're going to come in here and we're going to, let me get rid of a few of the groupings that we have here. We'll just get rid of this one. Sometimes I'm going to come in here and I'll go into that list and I'll say, okay, well, this report would be really great if it had these additional columns. And I went into profile roles. I couldn't see those columns there. I still would like those columns. So Kenny was kind enough, and Kenny from Microsoft is the guy that works in all the reporting. He's fantastic. And he came in and said, okay, well, what if we could, not in the list, keep in mind, this is not in the list view, but what if we could, in the analysis view, allow users to add fields from other tables? That would be cool. So they came in and said, okay, maybe we could join this to some separate tables. And I noticed when I was looking at these transactions themselves, and if I drill in, that these were mostly purchases. I could tell that there was like vendor data that was coming in before I got into this list view. So maybe I want to grab a column from the vendor table. Okay. And when we come in, it's asking, how do you want to join it? If anyone's done SQL views in the past, I used to teach SQL reporting services. I used to build SQL queries. I miss those days kind of. But back when we did SQL and we did left joins, then we would have to figure out which column equals which column to get that data, right? We had to have a common, I always called it like math common denominators. Anyone remember that in math? That was a long time ago. See, we used math. Our teachers didn't realize we'd use it in accounting. But what was the common denominator between these two tables? Because I can only bring in a table if there's a common denominator between the two. So in this case, if it's the vendor, then I can come in and say, okay, the vendor source number would equal the number inside the vendor card. That's how I'm going to join it. So the source number ID inside this table would equal the vendor number, and then I want to grab the vendor data. And then what that does is it comes out, and look at this. It's getting us all the vendor fields from the vendor card. So maybe I want to grab the vendor name, right? Let's see if we have name in here. I haven't played around with this in a little bit. There we go. There's the name. I want to grab that one. I want to add it on. So I grab that field and I hit OK. And then now, if I go down into this data, let's see what we have here. There we go. Vendor name. We're grabbing Graphic Design Institute. So we didn't have that field before. I have had a lot of people ask me for this. They're like, okay, I see the vendor number. but that doesn't tell me who the vendor is, right? So nice that we now can add like vendor name or customer name. Now, keep in mind, if you have a general ledger entry that's coming from multiple sources, you're going to have to grab the vendor name as a column, the customer name as a column. Like there's going to be a lot of columns you have to grab. But super nice that Kenny added that. So again, you could send this out to Excel and pip. Now I get this question, what happens if I come back out of my analysis mode? This goes away unless I save this analysis view. Can we save analysis views? Absolutely. So we can come up here and we can call this whatever we want to call this. We'll call this royalty fees, I think is what I was looking at. It's something like that, and we can rename it. And so this just stays. So if I come back out of my royalty view and I come back into my royalty view, you'll notice it's coming right back into that pivot, which is really nice. Now you'll say, okay, Shannon, that's great, but I don't want to have to go build all these analysis views. That's a lot of work. I don't want to do that. So let's kind of get rid of our filters. Let's go back to our all view. And let's ask Copilot to do the work for us because, you know, Copilot, that's our best friend these days in Microsoft world. And if anyone's ever noticed this little symbol up here, we do have a Copilot analyze list Copilot feature that's available. And so now I can come in and I can say, Copilot, build this list for me. Right? I don't want to do the work. So I can say, hi, Copilot, please show me all account by month and then by dimension for the year 2026. And actually, let me add group by month and then account and then dimension. So I'm asking it to essentially take 2026, filter it, add month, account, and dimension, and then group that together. Let's see how well it does. Now, Microsoft would want to hear this. Sometimes this works and sometimes it's not so great. It gets close, but it's been better lately. And I will say this, if you ever don't like it with any AI generated content, there usually is a feedback, thumbs up, yes, I love it, thumbs down, no, I don't love it. And then you could also tell them what didn't work, right? Because when we're using AI models, we're training it. So Microsoft doesn't always know it didn't work, right? So now we can pull this out. Okay, there's 2026. Here's all my list of months. And you notice in here, it's giving us the total of transactions. That's actually really nice too, how many documents exist. And then if I pull it down, I'm seeing my account names here. Now, maybe I want account number. I could go replace that over here, but it is giving me and my account names. And then further down, it's breaking that down by department. So did a pretty good job, right? And I'll say, okay, good job, Copilot. So I can give it a thumbs up. I like it. And of course, Microsoft wants you to give all this feedback. We're not going to do that right now. But essentially, we have that list. Now, if you love it and you want to rename it, you can come up and say, here's my 2026 breakdown by account. Just call it the 2026 breakdown. That sounds funner. And we can rename it. And again, we leave here, we come back, and we have that nice view. So huge time saver, this analysis view, especially when we're just trying to do quick ad hoc reporting. Your boss calls and says, how much sales do we have by this account, or how many of this thing did we ship, or how many of this. I use this also. Item ledger entries is really great for those of you who use inventory. I always get people who are like, I want to see all my inventory on hand and I want to see it by lot number. You can actually do that with analysis view. So you can filter that down and group it by location and then group it by your lot number, your serial number, and get like counts. So that's a really great way to do it. Like I said, I've used it for trial balances because essentially if I didn't have the months in here and I just had the GL accounts, I would have a true trial balance and that should equal 0. But I use it for that. And then also just totaling, right? Down here, it's giving me like totals or counts. So if I'm looking for counts, maybe I was looking at a batch and I know I had 26 ledger entries and I don't want to go filter general ledger entries to get 26. I could just filter by that batch and then just count and see, okay, yep, 26 equals 26. There's a total done. So I use this all the time. You also have it pivot mode up here on the right, where you can pivot your value columns and get them over here as your columns themselves. So you do have this pivot mode. That's really helpful. And then, like I mentioned before, over here we can select and unselect any of these columns that are available to show up here. If you do it with Copilot, it's usually only pulling in a certain amount of those columns. So if you want more, obviously you can go add them into there before you run this, but that's really, really nice and helpful. So use that. It's great. Like I mentioned, that's general ledger entries, but you're going to see this pretty much everywhere throughout the system. And even sometimes in the master records, you're seeing these analysis views as well where, yeah, vendor ledger entries. I don't know why that's coming in pivoted. I told you that's been happening. But in here, we can come in and come back out. So really, really helpful. Try that out. And this is meant as kind of a, I'll call it the ad hoc reporting tool, right? It's the one Microsoft's giving us to kind of get started on doing our own analysis. All right. And something else just good to mention for those of you who are exploring things like Power BI, all of those ledger entries, those are the history of whatever that module is. So general ledger entries or journal entries, vendor ledger entries, all your vendor history, customer ledger entries. So if you're looking to build Power BI reports or other reporting tools, those are the kind of tables you're going to want to pull out via the API. Okay, Excel reports. When we go into Excel reports, we have quite a lot of things. And I told you I have on each one of these, I have screenshots. So not a huge death by PowerPoint, but we do have screenshots and how to go back and try these on your own. If you've never tried an Excel report before, this will be new to you. So we have this capability in BC, and I don't know if you've ever worked in report layouts, but when you work in report layouts, you'll notice that one of your layout types that you can actually select inside of Business Central is an Excel-based report layout. You're like, what the heck is that? This is where that comes into play. So what Microsoft went out and did is said, okay, some of the users, they just want to have things in Excel. They don't want to have it in another reporting tool. So we're going to give them some out-of-the-box Excel reports. And then we're also going to give them the capability to actually build their own. So if we go into Business Central and I'm on the Business Manager Role Center. Now, if you're not on the Business Manager Role Center, this Excel reports won't be here, but you could come here to the global search and you could just do Excel reports. And then if you go down and say, show all 12, here's show all 12 on this page. Or we could just do Excel. Sometimes I filter this a little bit too much. And do show all 15 down here. And then we're going to see all of these ones that have Excel in brackets at the end. These are all the Excel reports that are going to be available to us. Now, Kenny, when we did the session in Asia, he said, well, maybe that's not the best way to find all the Excel reports. And I said, well, what would be the best way, do you think, to find all the Excel reports? And he said, I personally, so I'll teach you what Kenny taught me because he's really good at teaching. He said, I would come to report layouts. And if you've never been in this window, this is where we can see all of the different report layouts that Business Central has. And Business Central Sandbox is thinking. Okay. And then he said, I would come here and I would just search the word Excel. And then I would see, you know, that these are Excel-based reports. So if you want that true list of like all of them, here's a lot of the different ones that are here in Excel layout. Okay. And then of course you could open this in Excel and send it to Excel. So that's kind of nice that you can actually see that there. All right, so let's run one of these. Now, I don't use all of these, but there are some really good ones. So let's just do like an aged accounts receivable and take a look at what that one looks like. So people get a little confused when they come here to run an Excel report because they assume like I press the button and then the data goes to Excel. But if anyone's ever taken a whole data table out of any system and try to dump it to Excel, what could happen? The whole table could break, right? Depending on how much data you have, you're going to dump it and then it's going to say, okay, can't handle this much data, close, you're done. So they assumed that with building these. And then they also said, well, the users probably don't want all the data. They need data from a certain period, and then they want to be able to put in some filters before they send it to Excel. So that's what this is for. So in here, we can see that this is aged as of this date. We'll leave that because we know we have 2026 data. We can choose how we want to age this, by due date, by posting date. We'll do it by document date. Your period length, how big are your periods? You have control over that. That's kind of nice. And then your period count. Let's do 4 periods. Do we want to skip customers with a 0 balance? Sure, I don't care about them. And then if I want to filter this further, maybe I'm using customer posting groups as a filter inside of BC, I could filter that even further. So all I'm doing here is just adding those filters. Of course, I can add more here. And then what I want to do is I just want to download this report. This is not a refreshable Excel report, okay? This is a one-time download because I'm adding these filters in. And this is always where the users get stuck. I show them how to do this and they say, yeah, I ran it and it was blank, didn't work. Enable editing, okay? This is, even though it's Microsoft, Microsoft is still kind of blocking Microsoft content, and then enable content. So you're gonna see 2 little pop-ups up here. You do have to enable both of those because they're pulling the data down from Business Central Cloud. You'll see that down here into this workbook. But just like that, we now have a full listing of our accounts receivable by invoice, by amount, by date. And if you don't like this report, okay, maybe you want to remove some of these columns or you want to kind of change this format. I'm going to show you in a second how you can change that. But here, that's pretty good looking, right? And I can see here, here's all my different lists. If I want to, I could add some filters in here. And then each one of these just kind of shows, you know, a pivot table that Kenny's built. Of course, you can change this pivot as well. We have our fiscal calendar year. We have amounts due by currencies. And then he's got in each one of these about the report where you can go to the documentation of how this report's actually calculated, which is kind of nice. So cool, we have all of these. So how do we change it? All right. If I go back to run that same report, aged accounts receivable, you will notice here, and this is with any report you run inside of BC, if you go to report layout, you're going to see the report name here, aged accounts receivable Excel. If I click on these 3 dots, it tells me the report ID that I'm looking at. So in this case, I'm looking at 4402. Nobody forget that. I always forget numbers. 4402. So now I'm going to go to report layouts. I always take a snag shot so I don't forget by the time I get to this window. And I'm going to search for report layout 4402. And there it is. Okay. Now this is the one out of the box. All right, it's the default one. And you'll know it's a default report because this default is checked. So then you'll say, okay, how do I modify this? What you're going to do is you're going to create a new version of this report. So we're going to create new here at the top, and we'll call this DUG test AR. Okay, and you'll notice the default. And actually, this is the default for all report layouts is Excel, but in this case, we truly do want Excel. We want to keep this an Excel report. And then we're going to hit OK. And then it's going to ask us, oh, shoot, we forgot one step. Let's export that layout first. And I always forget to do this. There's the layout. And then let's create that new one because you have to have a template of what you want to use. So we'll call it DUG24/7. This time, and when we hit OK, that's where it's asking for that one that we just exported. So we're going to pull that version that we just exported. Okay, so now that's there. I'm going to export it again with the correct name. And then it's going to pull up that report layout. Okay, so now I can come in here and I can see everything that's here. If I enable editing, I can see all of the pivot fields that it's bringing in. So maybe I don't use multi-currency and I want to get rid of that. And I can get rid of any of these local currency fields. And if I want to change any of these fields, I can. Okay, so this is essentially bringing in a pivot table. I can see that this is coming in from a pivot table, and I can see which rows, which values, which columns. Maybe I just want to change the colors on the report. I can change that. So I could come in here and make this a whole different color, make it look prettier. Anyway, you can change this report. And if you have a developer, I'm not a developer, but I have good developers. But if you have a developer, then those developers can actually add additional data to this. So maybe you want some additional fields, you're going to need a developer to actually help you out with that. Okay. But if the data set's there, then you can actually build into the Excel report. All right. And then we just change it however we want to change it. Let's get rid of some of these. And then what you want to do is you want to come back here to the one that you created, and you're going to replace the layout with your new one. So you're going to go find that one that you just changed. And if you want to set it as the default, you need to set it as the default here. So how do I do that? I go to layout, set as default, and then now this one is going to be our defaulted one. All right. So let's come out of here. Let's go back to our Excel reports. Aged accounts receivable, and download again. And then just like that, we've pulled that data out, and bam, new color. Very pretty. Okay, so those are the things you can change without a developer. You need some more advanced features, you can actually do it with a developer. But I will say this, we have built custom reports for customers using Excel-based reports as well. We had a customer call us last week. They're going to be new to BC. They're moving from GP, and they have this very complex report that they use now that's kind of a SQL view, but they need to join a bunch of tables. I would say probably 6 tables in BC to get the data they need for this report for their board. And so we're trying to solution architect this, and I said, okay, we could make this a list page, we could do this. And then our developer said, okay, let's just do this as an Excel report, because I can build the query behind the scenes, I can publish it to an Excel-based report object, and then all the user has to do is just come in and add the filters for the dates, and choose maybe some additional filters if they want additional filters, and then bam, it's down in Excel, and they can do their pivots and their analysis, because they do a lot more work on that report after it's in Excel. So it's kind of a really good way to kind of solution architect out of the box reports custom reports that you may not have that you need to use. One last thing on this topic, you may want to also use this new fixed asset analysis or fixed asset details report. If anyone's dealt with fixed asset reporting in BC, it's not pretty. That's a nice way to put it. And so I love these new fixed asset reports. There's analysis and there's details, but let's just run this one so I can show you what these ones kind of look like. Maybe I skipped a step on what are the filters that I have to add. I do that sometimes. Let's see what it wants here. Appreciation book. Yeah, company, start date, end date. Okay, those look good. And oh, let's just get rid of this class code. I don't know why that filter's in there. Okay, well, we're not going to run that one. I don't know what's going on with that report. We've been having a lot of little buggy issues happen with BC. Let's try the details one. No, neither of those are working. Okay, well, we're going to report those to Kenny, because those look like 28 bugs. These typically, you just download them and they run. So I don't know why they're not running, but we'll report that to Kenny. All right, but those ones are nice when they are running. I think that was happening to me a couple weeks ago, which is really, really fun. Okay, so we've gone over Excel-based reports, we've gone over analysis views. Let's get into financial report changes. If anyone's ran financial reports in BC in 28, you probably realized a lot of changes have come into place, and I have, like I mentioned, slides there. So things that have happened that allow you to do some more work with financial reporting. We have a new tile view where we can view all of our reports in kind of a tile-like view, so we can see every report that's out there. We now have report categories where we can put things into, maybe these are our balance sheet reports, these are our income statement reports, these are our cash flow reports. So we don't just have this list that nobody knows what they are. We now have life cycle statuses that we can add to our reports, so we can activate and deactivate our reports, or maybe even put those report as in work in progress so that we know not to use it yet because somebody's working on it. We can add company specific defaults to how we want the reports to show, which I'll show you that. Probably our favorite new feature of 2028, dimension perspectives, where we can run a report by all the dimensions at once. So I'll show you what that looks like. We have column dynamic names where we can change how the names of columns are showing up. We have scheduling for reports now, right, where we can schedule and run reports either as an email or into our report inbox. And then we have audit logs. So we have quite a few changes here. And I'm going to try to be as quick as I can on this because there's a lot. So first of all, financial reporting, where we can actually see our list tile view. If we come back into our roles center, I don't think I have financial reporting as a shortcut. Let's see if I have it here. Financial, where is it? There it is. Okay, so I'm going to add it as my shortcut here because I might need to come back in here. We now have the capability to look at this in tiles versus just a list. This has always been the way we've looked at it, especially when it was account schedules. We now can go into tiles and actually see each of these like this. And why is that important? Well, now we can actually go into each of these report definitions, and we can actually add like a summary of what this report does. Okay, so maybe we want some more detail on what this report actually does. We have the capability to do that here on the report definition. We can also add introductory and closing paragraphs now to our reports. So maybe you have like a board report and then you need to add, you know, here's some more information about this. I love how BC is hanging up while I'm doing a demo. But we can add some introductory and closing statements here. And here's where we can put that description. So we could say, this is our, I have no idea what this report is. Account categories overview. Okay. This is a report to run to all account categories, something like that. And you also can now set in the report definition where you want the logo to show up if you want a logo, which is really nice. I used to have to like send out the report layouts and put the logo and bring it back in. So that's really kind of great. And I was mentioning we can now have statuses on our reports if we edit the report definition, and these statuses are going to be whatever you want them to be. So I would typically see that customers would do something like this: active, inactive, in progress, maybe stuff like that. You can add a name and a description. But this is something I love. You can actually block people from running an active report. So maybe you had an old layout, you don't want anyone running this anymore. You could actually say, okay, all inactive reports are blocked. We don't want people running those. We just want them running active. Or even maybe I want to block in progress because we're still working on those reports. So this is really nice actually, because I've gone in and seen like tons of report layouts and I'm like, what do you guys use? And everyone's like, we don't know. We don't know what half of these reports are. So that becomes pretty frustrating for the users when they're trying to pick one. But this is where we can go in and add those statuses there, which I think is really nice. So these are some of the controls that you have here on the report definitions. And if we go back out, now we can see that that category description that we added is actually showing up here in the tile view. So when people go to run the report, they're like, okay, this is the report I need, because some of these names are super confusing based on, you know, what you add. But if we go back into that edit report definition one more time, I hate that I can't get to that there, but we'll try it here. You will also see here that you can use audit logs now for these reports as well. Now, this is a newer feature for 28, so this is not going to go back in time for each of these, but we can see here on 721, I was actually changing this report and it's showing who changed it. So let's say you have a report and people keep messing with it and you don't know who's changing it. There's now this audit log where you can say, okay, who is actually modifying this report and who made changes to it? Because if you think it changed, it's really hard to tell. So now if you go into the report definition, you can see that audit log and see who's actually running this. And then also people who are viewing it. So maybe you need to figure out which ones, you know, people are actually using. I think that's great. All right. If we go back here to our main page, under our definitions, we now see a new definition: edit dimension perspective. And everyone's like, what the heck is a dimension perspective? I don't know what that is. We don't have, oh, we need to add it to our financial report. So let's go into our financial report. I think we can actually just go here to our, I don't think we add it here. Now it's been like 2 or 3 weeks since I've done this for the first time. Let's go back into, let me try to get back in through this way. All right, let's go into one of these. And we should have here when we run this. No, I'm not seeing it. I don't see our dimension perspectives. Oh, there we go. Okay, here we go. So when you run the report, and this only happens when you run it, all right, whether you're running it in Excel or you're running it here, when you run it, you now have the capability to add this thing called dimension perspectives. So what is a dimension perspective? I want to run one income statement, but I want to run it by each of these dimensions, and I want to see that report for each of those dimensions. Well, I can create a new dimension perspective here in this list. So let's just call this, I think one of ours was department, one of our dimensions here in Kronos. And here on this dimension perspective, I can come in and edit the definition of this. So now I can come in and say, okay, this is going to be admin. I can click my buttons, and then let me give it a name. And you can call this something different, but we'll just call it admin. And then this one is going to be, I don't know what these are, so I need to look them up first. This one's going to be production. And then this one is going to be our sales. Okay, so we're going to have one breakdown for admin, we're going to have one breakdown for production, and we're going to have one breakdown for sales. If we wanted to, we could put 1 or 2 of these dimensions together. But essentially what we're doing is saying we want to run this by department. So we want all of our departments here. And if you wanted to do multiple dimensions, you could do that. So we build this financial dimension, and then now we can run one report with that dimension perspective in it. So if I come out here and I say, okay, I want to run it, I don't put any filters or anything like that in it, and I do preview and close, then when it runs the report, it's not only going to run the summary level report, which is the one I'm looking at in BC, it's also going to run one for each of those departments. And department codes, whether or not there's data for it or not, that's a whole different story. But in here, now we see there's a page for admin, there's a page for production, and there's a page for sales. Looks like sales is the only one that has data. But you'll see in here that I can see that report for each one of those departments. So one report I'm running, but when I run it, I'm telling it to pivot and run for each of those dimensions, which is really, really nice. And everyone can say, bravo, Microsoft. We've been waiting for that for a long, long time. So those are some of the changes, some of the bigger changes that we have here with our reports. You know, these are all new features to come out and check out. I don't have time to go into every single one of them in 50 minutes, but yeah, we do have slides on it. So go test out those new features. That's probably my favorite new feature of financial reporting, but I do have slides available for all of this. Okay. All right. Let's see. Power BI, last but not least, and this is not my biggest topic that I cover, but my typical co-presenter, Tanya, her and I covered this in Asia, but let's just go over some of the changes in Power BI. Number 1, if you are using web services for Business Central, for integrations, for reporting, for Power BI, for whatever you're using it for, it is going to be deprecated in 2027. So if you are going into web services inside of BC and you're using the web services links, those are going to be deprecated in 2027. You say, how do I know if I'm using those? You need to go back to your report builders, to your partner, go take a look. Those things are being deprecated. You do need to use APIs going forward. So that is something that's really good to know. We have had a lot of chats about it as MVPs, but that is something that is going to be deprecated by Microsoft, and we've been told 2027. So how do we get the data for Power BI? If you're in Get Data in Power BI, you will see Business Central Cloud or on-prem. If you're on-prem, you will see Business Central available where you can pull that data in through Power BI, and that will be using the standard APIs. So that's the best way to try to grab the data there. You also can grab data from other sources. So you could grab it from Dataverse, you could grab it from other data. As long as you have an API, you can come in here to from other sources, from OData, and actually get that data in the OData feed to feed into Power BI. So the same way you pull it into Excel, you can pull it into Power BI as well as Dataverse as well. Standard out-of-the-box Power BI reports. There's about 14 out-of-the-box Power BI dashboards now available for Business Central. There's one for manufacturing, there's one for projects, there's one for finance, there's one for payables, there's one for sales. There are out-of-the-box Power BI reports now, and you may not like what Microsoft builds. That's okay. They're now allowing you to take their dashboards, send it down to Power BI desktop, make your changes, and publish it as your own Power BI dashboard now. So they're giving you the data feeds, they're giving you the starting point. Now it's up to you to go out and modify them the way you are. But go out to AppSource. If you go out to Microsoft AppSource, filter by Power BI, search for Business Central, make sure the publisher is Microsoft. You're going to see all of those dashboards. And if you go to Microsoft Learn, there's some documentation on how to connect them and how to work them, but there's some really great tools out there. You also can take that same data and make your own custom. This is a custom balance sheet, custom assets and liability type report. You can make your own Power BI reports as well using those same data sets. So there's some really cool things that you could do with Power BI. I don't recommend financials in Power BI, but get your other data that you would use out of Power BI. And then last but not least, if you like paginated reports, like I mentioned, I used to do SQL reporting services for GP. We used to use SSRS reports. You can build those with Power BI. So Power BI has a report builder where you can build paginated reports with those same datas, and then you can run them inside of Power BI. So that is a capability that you have with Business Central data. And of course, this will just be dependent on what you want to use. And then you can take that same data from your Power BI reports and pull it back into Excel. So you can connect to Excel using your Power BI APIs, and you can actually create your own pivot tables, do your own filters and slices. So think about it, you can use it either way, right? Which is great. All right, so 3 things to remember from this session. Analysis views, we're gonna try those out. Those are good for our daily digging and analysis. We've got our Excel and financial reports that are more polished, more pretty layouts. And then, of course, we have Power BI when we need to scale and we need to have more enterprise level dashboards. That's going to be our great way to kind of pull that data out to give to our board members. So, yeah. Thank you all. I appreciate you all attending. I hope this goes as a great event. If you're staying on for the day, I think at 3 o'clock Mountain Time, which would be 4 o'clock Central, I am in a shootout with Ben Cole and Tanya Henderson, BC Trivia. So we're going to have a Jeopardy-like trivia game. We did some testing on household items last week. It was kind of probably one of the funniest things that you've ever seen. So it should be very comical. It should be very entertaining. We'll see how much I actually know about Business Central because supposedly Ben Cole's the champion, and I'm looking forward to it. It should be a really great time. So if you're going to be on, I think that's 3 o'clock Mountain Time. Yeah. So
exactly. It's 5 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Mountain. Looks like a fun one. Yeah, we're excited. Game show. And what's really cool, I don't know if I have to ask Brad, but when we first talked, he said not only so it'll be you and Tanya and Ben going at it, but the audience can actually answer the questions along with the game. So you can participate. So it's full participation. You won't be able to voice out, but you'll be able to kind of check your own knowledge in the moment to see how you're stacking up. Maybe we'll even make it a contest. If you do outduel, Ben or Shannon, and you get them all right somehow, I'm sure Brad can track that for us.
Yep, absolutely. It should be a good time. And Brad's always a great host, very funny guy from Boston. So it should be fantastic.
Yes,
Beau and Bobby, you guys are doing a great job, by the way, holding.
Thank you.
So, yes.
Yep. And we're excited. It's early. Like we're just finishing up the first quarter. And I feel like, super strong. Check back on us if you're up and you're up getting a drink of water at 1 a.m. this morning. Just jump in and see how we're doing. Just maybe book some wake if you could.
Q4 is going to be tough. Shannon,
Q4 is going to be tough. That's where the road meets the rubber meets the road. So great conversation, by the way. I'm not kidding when I tell you, as an IT director, the biggest bane of my life in a sales organization was answering questions about reporting. How much did I sell here? Why did this number not match? Why is this happening? I'm constantly in SQL writing reports, kicking out Excel sheets for people to analyze, and answering questions that could be self-service, that can be pulled together with a greater source of truth. So the advancements in what's happening in reporting, it seems, a vanilla topic, but I'm telling you, it's one of the most important in your organization, and having better tools is awesome.
Yeah, and kind of when we're building BC for new customers, that's one of my first topics is what kind of reports do you need? Because that's how we're going to build BC. Because BC is a database, F&O is a database, CRM is a database. It's not a reporting tool, right? But we need to make sure that we have the data in there to get the reports that we need. So that's so important to customers. But the investments that Kenny has been doing, it's fantastic. So thank you, Kenny, and thank you, Microsoft.
You got plenty of shout outs in the chat.
Yeah, and I think these improvements will continue throughout this year. I think the focus will probably switch at some point to something else because they've been trying to enhance certain areas of BC one at a time. I don't know if anyone's noticed that pattern with Business Central, but every release we kind of have a focused area. So financial reporting's been a focus for about 2 years, but I figure they'll start to switch to other things eventually.
No, I agree. So, I feel like I agree with you. It's been a lot of activity around, which is again great. I appreciate it. Thanks again, Shannon. Have a great rest of your day.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you again.
Look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah.